Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome into the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Friday, July 31st, 2015. I am Dave Biddle, and I'm joined by my man Steve Hellwagon. We are coming to you from Chicago, where the second day of Big Ten Media Days will kick off later today. But Ohio State's portion of Media Days were yesterday, and obviously it began with the bad news yesterday morning that Joey Bosa, Jalen Marshall, Corey Smith, and Dontre Wilson will be suspended for the opener against Virginia Tech. Bad news, obviously, but this is not catastrophic. I think if they're able to beat Virginia Tech, which I think they will, we'll look back on this as a blip in the radar. But the problem is now beating Virginia Tech. Steve, just your thoughts on Bosa, Marshall, Corey Smith, and Dontre Wilson being suspended, what impact you think that might have?
Well, I think it does have an impact, at least in terms of that game and probably preseason camp as well. And, just to say, the sun did come up today. Ohio State did win the national championship last year, so everyone can still bask in that glow. And this is a story that got virtually no play. Ohio State was installed as the number one team in the country in the USA Today coaches poll, so that's kind of cool in and of itself because it's very rare that the team is number one in the preseason, and I mean everybody's seen that coming. So that's some good stuff that at least happened on Thursday. Now we got to look at the not so good. You're talking about missing Joey Bosa, a guy that had, I'm going to say off the top of my head, 13 or 14 sacks and 20 tackles for loss last year, and was a unanimous All-American. They're going to plant a tree for him in the All-American Grove when his career is done. And I'm working on the story about the top 5 defensive linemen in OSU history, and I kind of struggle. I don't think he's there just yet, but with another year like he just had, he could end up right up there with the likes of a Mike Vrabel and a Jim Stillwagon and some of the others. Dan Wilkinson was a number 1 draft pick. Some of the others, and so it's very unfortunate. I mean, Joey Bosa is considered a top 5 NFL draft pick for next year, and for him to have this now on his resume, whatever it is, and the NFL teams will do their digging and get exactly what this was, and Coach Meyer was not elaborating about it. This does not help his draft stock, certainly, that there are now questions about something that he did off the field. And Jalen Marshall, I mean, I've known him since his sophomore, junior year of high school. I've never heard of anything where he would be involved in anything off the field. Corey Smith, Dontre Wilson, you just hoping that these guys, that this is the kind of blip on the radar that gets their attention. And I made a point in the reaction column I wrote, Steve says, on Bucknuts.com. I said, this can cut one of two ways. I mean, it can divide the team and be, a reason why they don't repeat as a national champion, or for the 60 guys who have to go down and play Virginia Tech in that hostile environment, it can galvanize them and bring them together with great unity, and then go down there and pull out the win. So, very interesting story, and very unfortunate these guys are involved.
And Steve, let's delve into who's going to step up with these guys missing the first game. Unfortunately, again, a 1-game suspension. We're not talking about these guys missing half of the season. We're not talking about season-ending injuries. Again, in the grand scheme, I don't think this is a huge deal. But Virginia Tech brings back a ton of starters. Blacksburg's a tough place to play. So let's break down the impact and who's going to step up. I tend to think at the H-back position, this is not a huge deal, and I'm a huge Jalen Marshall fan. As you mentioned, he's a great guy off the field, and I tend to think he's a future star on the field. We saw that last year. He had some ball security issues, but then he turned that around and was really a huge part of that national championship run, made some great plays. That being said, as big of a Jalen Marshall fan as I am, when you have Curtis Samuel playing the H, when you have Braxton Miller now playing the H, I think the Buckeyes are going to be fine there. Corey Smith and Dontre Wilson, again, I think those losses are not big at all. And Dontre Wilson, there was some question whether he was even going to be able to begin the season because of his foot injury. He suffered the broken foot against Michigan State last year, re-injured the foot, had a second surgery on it. So Joey Bosa is the one big loss. Because keep in mind, even Tyquan Lewis people are talking him up. He has never started a game yet. So he was the one new starter. Now there's going to be a second new starter. They're going to move Sam Hubbard over there and have kind of two weak side defensive ends playing together. A guy like Darius Slade's going to be able to get more of a chance now. Jalen Holmes. So we're going to see some really young defensive ends out there in that first game, Steve. And I think that's the only position that's really going to hurt Ohio State in that first game. Not taking anything away from those other guys, but that defensive end spot, that's the one I'm really looking at. Your thoughts on who steps up in the absence of those guys?
Yeah, I think you did a great job there of naming all the guys who I would probably consider. I think at defensive end, we really don't have a sample size to say it should be Tyquan Lewis, Jalen Holmes, Sam Hubbard, Darius Slade is in there, and, of course, the true freshman, Ja'Shawn Cornell, would be in that group. You also got Draymond Jones, who's a true freshman, who will be in there as well. So,
but he's hurt, though.
Yeah, a little banged up. So, it's interesting. They're going to solve that during preseason camp. I think it'll be interesting to see how many reps Bosa gets. They'll probably have him in there for most of the first 2 weeks and then maybe taper him back and get the other guys most of the reps after that. Over at those receiver positions, Jalen Marshall at the end of last year was probably one of the top playmakers in college football. When you think about from the Minnesota game on, he was nothing short of sensational. And I think about the two long passes he caught from Cardale Jones in the Alabama game when they were down 21-6 that got the ball rolling back the other way.
Huge.
And the circus catch he had against Oregon. Of course, he also had a ball go right off his hands for an interception against Oregon. But, we're not going to get into the bad about that. But Corey Smith, big catches against Alabama and Oregon in those two wins. And he's a guy that people are looking at to be possibly a starter with Evan Spencer and Devin Smith gone. Corey Smith could be a guy that could stretch a defense as well. So interesting. And I agree with you on Wilson, the foot. I mean, is he ever going to be completely healthy to where he can live up to the hype and all the promise that he had coming out of high school?
Steve, you did a real nice piece for the site yesterday on Braxton Miller. Urban Meyer talking about Braxton Miller. And before you get to talking about your piece on Braxton Miller, I want to throw this out there. Urban Meyer, we got a chance to talk to him when he wasn't at the podium yesterday. And for people that think that Braxton Miller is definitely moving positions, and that's me in that group as well, because I know Urban's been kind of saying, oh, hold your horses there, that maybe there's still a chance he's going to play quarterback. I think that ship has sailed. But Urban did point something out, and I do agree with this. He said if J.T. Barrett and Cardale Jones both get hurt, Braxton Miller is our quarterback. Now, he didn't put it in those terms exactly. The quote was, if we have two broken chin straps, he's playing quarterback. So if you're in the I hope Stephen Collier plays. If the other two guys go down, bad news for Stephen Collier there. Sounds like Braxton is the option there if J.T. Barrett and Cardale Jones get hurt. But anyway, Steve, moving on, tell the listeners about what you gleaned from Urban Meyer on Braxton Miller yesterday.
Well, it's obvious that Urban Meyer, his love affair with Braxton Miller has not abated one iota, to borrow an old Marty Brenneman line. But, the comment that he and other players that were here in Chicago, Adolphus Washington and Taylor Decker and those guys said yesterday was, he was a freak athlete playing quarterback. Well, now they can throw the ball to him on a swing pass or get it to him on a jet sweep or, come up with any number of creative ways to use him. And they all want to see what happens when he can get out in the open field and really make people look bad. Adolphus Washington had some great quotes that are in the Adolphus Washington story that I did, where he said that it didn't matter that Braxton Miller wore a black jersey. You couldn't get a hand on him anyway if you wanted to during practice. That was very telling, and called him a human joystick. So I think everyone was very intrigued about the opportunity to employ Braxton Miller in a number of different ways, and I just think that they're going to do everything they can to integrate as many of these great playmakers as they can. And with those guys out in the first game, Miller and Curtis Samuel in particular are going to have to probably step up.
I was really curious to ask Urban Meyer his thoughts on a two-quarterback system, and I got a chance to do that yesterday. And I knew he was not going to come out and say, yeah, we're definitely going to run a two-quarterback system. But there was a chance he was going to say, no, I have no interest in doing that. I asked him yesterday, is there a chance the Buckeyes could have a 2-quarterback system? I even set it up. I know you ran somewhat of a 2-quarterback system at Florida in 2006. I said, but I'm talking more about one guy starting, the other guy coming in the third or fourth series, like a true 2-quarterback system. And I found it interesting, Steve. He didn't discount the possibility. He just said, I don't know. I wouldn't feel right talking about that right now. I almost got the vibe that he's kind of leaning that way because really I cannot imagine a scenario where Cardale Jones just rots away on the bench this year.
Mm-hmm.
I cannot imagine a scenario where JT Barrett rots away
Definitely.
on the bench this year.
No.
So all offseason I've thought there was a chance of a 2-quarterback system. After asking Urban yesterday, I think there's even more of a chance now. I don't think it's definitely going to happen, but I think there's a good chance.
Yeah, I want to read between the lines from what Urban Meyer said. If I said that he has a love affair with Braxton Miller that has endured now 4 years, I would say he has an infatuation, would be the word I would use for JT Barrett and his leadership off the field, the things that he does to help prepare his teammates mentally and encourage them and, give them that inspiration that they need to go play football. I mean, JT Barrett, as a young kid, going just third-year sophomore now, you can tell the gleam in Urban Meyer's eyes and the smile that lights up his face when he talks about what JT Barrett did. And let's not lose sight of the fact that he accounted for 45 touchdowns and also nearly rushed for 1,000 yards, which he would have easily hit had he finished the Michigan game, probably in that game, if not, the Big Ten championship. So this is a guy that had one of the greatest seasons in the history of Big Ten football and is an efficient offense manager. If we say that Urban Meyer has a love affair with Braxton Miller and an infatuation with JT Barrett, I am now coming to believe that he has a grudging admiration for Cardale Jones.
We grudgingly admires Cardale.
It's a grudging admiration because he understands where Cardale came from. He said 2 years ago you couldn't use the word leader and Cardale Jones in the same sentence, and that's not the case anymore. He is a leader of men on this team. He just does it in a different way. He does it with a smile, a joke, a pat on the back. He is very upfront with his love for his brothers, and he's got a cannon for an arm. I think I agree with you, Dave, from all the way around the bend. I think if you put a gun to my head and say JT Barrett will start, but Cardale Jones will probably play at least one series in the first half of every game, and he'll be there in case the Buckeyes need him, at any point. But this is going to be so much fun to sort through this and see how it all shakes out.
Last topic here on the show, cost of attendance is a huge topic in the world of college football right now, and rightfully so. This is the first year that's been implemented. For those of you that don't know, cost of attendance just means that it's an extra stipend each athlete will get on top of what they already get as a scholarship athlete. They already received some money in addition to free tuition, room and board, and all that. They're just going to get extra money now. Good thing on the surface, right? Here's the problem. There are discrepancies across the board in terms of how these stipends are doled out from university to university. Using the Big Ten as an example, I did a piece on this for the site yesterday. Penn State gives out $4,700 per student, or per athlete, I should say, per athlete. Ohio State is almost half of that. Ohio State is $2,400. Michigan's even lower than that. They're around $2,000. Michigan State is the lowest at $1,800. By comparison, Tennessee has the highest in the SEC at $5,500. So if you're a recruit out there, you want to play for Urban Meyer, you want to be a Buckeye, it's not going to make a difference, right? But if there's a tiebreaker, Penn State's going to give you double what Ohio State gives you. Tennessee's going to give you $3,000 more per year than what Ohio State gives you. That could be a good tiebreaker because when you're in college, as anybody out there who's been in college, still is in college, $3,000 when you're in college feels like $30,000. So cost of attendance is a big deal, and I had a chance to ask Urban Meyer his thoughts on that, and he came out and said it's wrong, we need to change it. Not cost of attendance itself, but the fact that there are so many discrepancies across the board, and he thinks it needs to change, and he thinks it will change. He thinks there needs to be standardized stipends across the board. Steve Hellwagon.
I would agree with 100% with that. I think what they should have done was have every school calculate that based on the NCAA guidelines of what they defined it as, and then just average it out and say all Division I schools are going to give, if the average turned out to be 3,500 of what everybody determined, then that's what everybody gives out. And so, I think about, and this may not be a great example, Northwestern here in Chicago, maybe the cost of living. I mean, the gas in Columbus today is $2.20, something like that. When we got here to Chicago yesterday, it was $3.20. So the cost of living in Chicago, even in the suburbs in Evanston, is probably a little bit more than it is in East Lansing or Columbus or wherever else.
Or State College, which is the highest. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, so, I think on one hand, I see that there probably needs to be something to make up the difference or whatever, but I would rather have the disparity between the schools be very minimal, just a few $100s. Maybe, if you're on the high range, $4,000, and if you're on the low range, $3,500, and that's that.
And I want to let the listeners know Steve Hellwagon's book is getting rave reviews, which is the least surprising thing I've ever heard. Everybody who has read it loves it. I have a copy. I'm getting ready to read it. I can't wait to read it. But in the meantime, Steve, tell the listeners how they can buy this fantastic book.
Well, it's Undisputed Champions, 132 pages, full color, and all this great stories from the championship run, the quarterback situation, the sacred brotherhood of the defensive line, Q&A with Evan Spencer, some type of a tremendously long story on Urban Meyer, I think, that just kind of captured the essence of what he brought to Ohio State, and pictures, everything from all the games. This is a keepsake. I think this is a team that will live in the hearts and minds of Ohio State fans for a long time as the first ever college football playoff championship team, and I would hope that the people think that this is a worthy representation of what we saw last year. So go on Bucknuts.com, type in a search for Undisputed Champions, and you can get on the page there and get on our eBay page and either order online or send us a check, and we will ship you the book the same day we get your order. That's what we're up to now.
Great stuff from author and all-around great American, Steve Hellwagon. I am Dave Biddle. Great to talk to you guys from here in Chicago. I appreciate you guys tuning in for the show. Have a great day and have a great weekend. Take it away, best damn band in the land.